Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of PharSide Pholios. I am your host, Monica Leek, the managing editor of PharSide Co-Ed Book Club, and we want to thank you for joining us as we are finding joy in the genre in July with a special series of author highlights and interviews. So today we have with us Miss Isra Sravenheart. She's a USA Today best-selling author who lives in a fantasy world while writing elements of life and love in her books, digging into dark fantasy realm. Her preferred area is creating villains that have hearts, but she loves a good hero-heroine. Dragons, witches, and ravens are her forte. She resides in the UK and loves spending time with her cats. You can stalk Isra on her social media and find out what her next magical concoction will be. So welcome to the PharSide, Isra Sravenheart.
Thank you.
We're so excited to have you here with us on today. So we'll just dive into some of these.
Okay, no problem.
All right. So we are reading the first book in your series, which is her dark heart. So
her dark soul.
Her dark soul. Thank you. Chapter 1 begins with the following. From the beginning, there has already been magic. It can destroy us, but also be the best thing for us. Things are not always black and white. Witches are not always bad, but they're not always good either. So what about these words sets the stage for the story you're pulling your readers into?
Yeah, it's basically talking about a villain, but she's not strictly a villain in this stereotypical way that they are perceived, because she's got pretty good reasonings that are going to be explored. That are going to be explored, especially in books 2 and 3. But for the moment, people are not going to really get to know why until books 4 and 5. Now, those 2 were my favorite to write. Now, what I basically did is I did a George Lucas. So what I did is I did books 1, 2, and 3. And then I realized there was such an eccentric backstory between 4 of the main characters. So we're talking about Astrid the Raven, we're talking about Isra, we're talking about Samuel the Lightbringer, which unless you've read book 3, you won't know who that is. And of course, Everilda, which is Isra's ex-best friend. And so what happened was I was like, okay, we need to because throughout book 1 and book 2, we learn that Isra is dark. We don't really know why she's dark, other than it's basically, it has a lot to do with lost love. You know, she had her heart broken and she was just like, nope, I'm done with this, blah, blah, blah. And so when I did her dark love, that's when we fully go into why. So, and then after that, my personal favorite, people are probably going to get sick of me saying this, but my personal favorite is actually Kissing Darkness, because that's when we get to explore Isra as she is, because she doesn't actually go dark until the end of her dark love. So there is so much to cover. But because I basically, like I said, I did books 1, 2, and 3. And then for book 4, I literally went back in time to when Isra and Everilda were young, because Everilda plays a major part in this as well. I mean, those 2, for anyone that's read Her Dark Heart, they completely hate each other. You know, there's a lot of resentment on both sides. I would say there's more resentment on Isra's side, but it's kind of half and half. But what I've actually done here is, we fully go into the reasoning of why she is like she is. So it's not just your typical, like, Disney villain and, that they're just bad. I've given an eccentric story as to why.
So you had this whole forward story, and then, like you said, did a George Lucas, almost like a prequel to give the readers
exactly
that backdrop,
that
backstory as to what got them to into the space that they were in. So we've got Lady Isra, she's powerful in so many ways, but without a heart, which leads her into darkness. So how would you describe her character, like at the beginning, as we see her at the beginning of book one?
At the beginning of book one, I think she's obviously already in the dark side, and she's been there for a number of years. So she's kind of got that confidence about it. But then at the same time, she's very resilient. She's all about the power. She's all about, somebody, I don't want to give too much away here, but somebody comes to her, wanting something from her that she's got no intention of giving. And, she's got a particular aversion towards humans as well. So there's quite an interesting tangent there, which will kind of lead readers to think, well, hang on a minute, why does she not like humans? But again, they're going to have to read book 4 in the series to figure that out. But it kind of what I've done over time, because I wrote Her Dark Soul in 2013.
Wow.
I had no idea it would even be a book, never mind a series. So when I got onto writing Her Dark Heart, I think it was about halfway through Her Dark Heart that I was like, do you know what? This has got the potential. I was kind of free flowing with it. I never actually had any agendas behind it, because I was just basically taking it as it comes. And it was only about halfway through Her Dark Heart that I was like, oh, this could actually be a series. So it just came about so randomly. And now I'm working on book 6, which follows Kissing Darkness, which is book 5. And then after book 6, we're going to have book 7. And then book 8 is going to follow book 3. And we're going to go back to present day. So it's kind of, it is a little bit complicated, but basically the reading order will be Her Dark Love, Kissing Darkness, which are books 4 and 5. Book 6, I'm not going to give the title because I'll tell you why.
Mm-hmm.
I've had people steal titles before, so I'm deliberately keeping that one under wraps.
Hush,
it will be book 6, it will be book 7. And then it will be book 1, Her Dark Soul, 2, Her Dark Heart, 3, Her Dark Rose, and then book 8 will follow Her Dark Rose.
Okay, so our live viewers and replay viewers, take note of the reading order.
I'm actually, because what's recently happened is I've recently had the 5 books in the series that are already published. I've recently had them formatted. The reading order is actually in the front of each book.
Awesome.
So I've actually made it 10 times easier for people, because I actually did think about this, and I was thinking maybe, we need to have something there so that people can understand it a little bit better. Okay. So I have actually taken that into consideration, but there's going to be like 8 books, and I've already finished book 8. My editor is like 3/4 of the way through it, because she's absolutely crazily like fast at doing that stuff. And I am literally about 3/4 of the way through book 6. So potentially there's literally, 2.5 books from being complete, really. So it really isn't that far away at all. Whether there will be another one after book A, I mean, ultimately, I honestly don't know. I'm just literally, I'm free. I'm free flowing it. I'm in the moment with it. I've got no idea. But book 8's ending is very open ended, so there is the potentiality for another one.
So you're keeping the door open for more stories with the way
I mean, once because my main aim is to get the backstory, the going back in time stuff done first, so we are back in present day. That's the stuff I want to concentrate on, and then potentially there could be a 9th book, because I have left it extremely open-ended. Kind of because when I finished book A, I didn't know what I was going to do with it. It took me such a long time. And I was like, do you know what? I'm really not too sure where I'm going with this. So I'm going to leave it completely open-minded. And, I'm going to see what happens. Because I'm one of those people, I don't think too forward into the future. I'm more somebody that lives in the moment. So who knows what I could be doing a year from now, 6 months from now. I mean, I don't know. But I am hoping spring 2022, I'm hoping that all 8 books will be available.
All right. So I know for myself that I've got some catching up to do in the series. So I just I finished book 1.
Okay.
So I've got some catching up, and then I was looking through and seeing that you had like redone the covers and all those kinds of things.
To be honest with you, it was a major obstacle about a month and a half ago, because I wanted to rebrand the series. I wanted to freshen it up a bit. Because when I wrote Her Dark Soul in 2013, when you write your first book, there's always that kind of feeling like something isn't quite right, because I hadn't really found my writing style completely until book 3. So obviously the series has evolved significantly since 2013. And so I did originally call it the Blackened series, which I thought was a bit of a mouthful. And some of the titles, instead of dark in them, they had blackened. So I wanted to do a very subtle facelift.
Okay.
And in order to do that, I had to get new covers done. I had to get new formats done. And, I did actually, this is a bit of a stupid mistake, but for anyone that's listening, don't do what I did. I actually hired somebody on Fiverr.com, and it was an absolute disaster. I mean, we had 5 covers done. It took him the best part of bloody 2 weeks to do it, excuse my language. And after he'd done them, there was problems with at least 3 of the covers. And I was like, look, you need to go back and correct these. And I was literally, in this position of, potentially arguing with this dude, and we were not getting anywhere. And so I said, look, I'm going to have to get somebody else to work on this. I was really stressed for about 2 days, because I was like, what the hell am I going to do now? And, it was just absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy. And then it was because I did some recommendations on Facebook. I was like, who can do these covers? Blah, blah, blah. It needs to be a specific, because I knew exactly what I wanted. And yeah.
Well, the good thing is that
the good thing
you're able
is
to give guidance, because you did know exactly what what you wanted.
Yeah. I mean, the good thing is that it did actually turn out good, but like for the first couple of days, I was like, oh my God, this is a walking disaster. So wow.
Note to our future aspiring authors, those who are currently writing,
Yes.
when you're looking for services with, graphic arts and designs and covers and things of that nature, get some solid recommendations. And if you got some freelancers, you gotta, know kind of weed through and know what to ask, so you get.
Yeah, I mean, I actually did get some recommendations from somebody on my Facebook that actually is a Fiverr seller, but she is a top rated seller. And she said, I'm not going to name her anything because I don't know if she wants me to bring attention to this, but she said, go for star rated top sellers only if you're going to go for people on Fiverr. Make sure they've got lots of reviews and, hundreds and hundreds of reviews. And obviously, if their account has been created in the last 1 or 2 months, avoid them.
Gotcha.
So, but personally, my personal opinion of the whole thing, I would actually boycott the entire website. I mean, that is just based on my experience. Other people, they might be a bit more flexible. I'm just like, nope, that's it. No.
All right. So you're like one and done.
Yeah. The really good thing about all of this is my editor that has actually been doing the series with me since 2018. It turns out she's also an amazing formatter.
Wow.
So she ended up doing the formatting as well, which was super, super cool. Because I was, potentially worried about, oh God, I'm going to have to find a formatter now and all of this stuff. And, it actually turned out that most of the things that I was worried about, it just kind of worked itself out in the end. But any new authors, rookie authors, if you will, be very, very careful about the book services out there in terms of like cover design, editing, because you never know what you're going to end up with. One of the covers, she was supposed to be holding a black rose. I made it very clear that's what I wanted her to be holding. And, sometimes these designers, they just don't listen to you or whatever. And he basically, the hand was blurred. So she was holding the rose, but it looked like she was holding it so ridiculously. I was like, look, this doesn't even look realistic. And, it's just little things like that you need to be checking for.
Most definitely.
Otherwise you'll end up in a situation like I did, which was, I really don't recommend to anyone.
Well, to get back to your book and the series, how did you get into this kind of dark fantasy fiction style of writing?
I've always loved things like Grimm's fairy tales, Disney, obviously. Yeah. Most people have actually compared it to Disney films, which I feel is really impressive. Because they are literally like some of my favorite things like ever. But it was completely accidental because I was in between two houses at the time. Mm-hmm. There was one house that I was moving out of, and then there was another house that I was being moved to. And basically what was supposed to happen is there was a boyfriend that I was dating. The plan was we were going to move closer to be with one another. And then he ended up, ditching me for whatever reason. I mean, I was never actually given a reason. And so I was kind of left alone. All of my mutual friends stopped talking to me. I mean, some of these people I'd known for years as well. And I just actually, it was one rainy night, September 2013. I was alone with my thoughts and I started typing this thing up. I think originally I was writing it down on like A4 lined paper. But obviously with, laptops and stuff, once I had about 4 or 5 pages of this thing, I started typing it up. And that was literally the beginning of Her Dark Soul. So how it came about was just like rather random. I didn't plan it. I was just kind of sat there alone with my thoughts and all of this stuff, especially the scene where she's walking around and the leaves are changing color. The area that I was living in, that I'd moved to, I was surrounded by like these parks where the copper colored leaves were everywhere. And so that's where some of the inspiration comes from, the location that I actually ended up moving to. But because I was literally alone with my thoughts, it just came about.
So what are some of you've got this whole series, what you thought, started out as one book and became this whole series. And what are some of the themes or concepts that you've been able to highlight?
So the themes are definitely love that goes wrong, forbidden love, love that is just simply not returned. And we've also got, dealing with the fallout of losing that as well. And the really cool thing that happens in book 1, I mean, some people won't like this, but she actually finds love again in like towards the end of book 1, and he becomes a key figure in her life. And I'm not going to say too much more than that. You've already read book 1, so I'm sure you already know what I'm talking about. But it's about being able to find yourself in that love again once you've lost it and once you've lost all that trust previously. Some of the other things that we deal with, the whole light versus dark, that goes really intense, especially in Her Dark Rose, which is book 3. Because what we do with that one is we meet the Lightbringer, Samuel, towards the end of Her Dark Rose, but he is not exactly all that he seems. So we're going to find out more about him in Her Dark Love and Kissing Darkness, which are books 4 and 5 respectively. But sometimes the people that we believe are in the light, they're a little bit drawn to the dark side. So, what we perceive to be dark and what we perceive to be light can be very obscured, because some of these light characters, they're not as light as they make themselves out to be. So it's very, very interesting, because I've been able to explore all these different types of characters that you think are all nice and lovely and sweet and all that stuff, but it actually turns out they're a little bit more drawn to the other side than they would dare to admit.
All right.
So there's kind of a little bit of self-righteousness going on here and proud, but they've got that temptation in them, but they're just not willing to kind of admit it and fess up. So the whole concept is basically exploring those characters as well, because sometimes the good guys are not always the good guys. So I would say the main theme of the entire series is nothing is ever what it seems. There are some pretty twists and turns that just kind of, some readers might be scratching their heads. So it's kind of all been very elaborately kind of set out to be like that. But nothing is what it seems, put it that way.
Well, it definitely has its twists and turns, which maintains the reader's attention.
Yes.
And you give such great description and detail in how you develop, your characters and settings, and just the way you frame the world.
Yes.
That Isra is in, and her emotions and feelings at different moments that you just pick up on.
Yeah,
it really definitely pulls the reader in. So would you even consider writing in another genre if you had that?
I would be very interested in doing horror at some stage of the game. But obviously, I've made a commitment to one series, and so I'm definitely going to get this sorted and wrapped up. I did actually do a book called Heart of Oz. It's kind of a prequel to The Wizard of Oz, like before the wizard came. But I've been so engrossed in the Dark Spell series that I've not really had a chance to go back to that. I probably would be interested in other subgenres of fantasy. But horror is definitely something I would like to try my hand to.
And of course, with the success that you've had with this particular series, what is something you would like to see beyond the book series? Is there something that you specifically like to see this series turn into?
Well, I've actually been joking with a couple of my writer friends on Facebook that it would be really good if Netflix were to pick it up, but that's just me throwing an offhand comment out there. I mean, I'm not kind of intending it to get picked up by Netflix. I mean, to be honest with you, I would probably spit out my coffee if it did. But I really love shows like Lucifer. That's one of my favorite shows at the moment. American Gods, I thought that was brilliant as well. The Handmaid's Tale, that's not necessarily fantasy, but it kind of is in a sense. It's kind of what do they call it? They call it dystopian fantasy. But yeah, I mean, if the Dark Spell series was picked up by Netflix or Prime or any of those streaming services, that would be phenomenal, really. But obviously there's so much to it. I mean, just in 5 books there's like so much that I've already covered. I mean, I am 3/4 of the way through book 6 at the moment. So technically, it's 7 books that I've done because I actually wrote book 8 before I started book 6. I know the whole order is very mismatched, but that's just because I ended up doing 2. Because I ended up being part of 2 box sets as well. 2018 and 2019 were very busy. They were a very busy 2 years. Because when you're working on a box set that is, a bunch of authors that all submit a story, there's a lot of marketing, there's a lot of promoting involved with that. And so writing did kind of slow down on the Dark Spell series. But what I actually did is I think I managed to finish Her Dark Rose before the second box set was due to even start. And then I started Her Dark Love as well at the same time. And then I also started what is now book A at the same time as well. So I had about 2 or 3 things going on at once. So that's why book A took me nearly between 2018 to 2021 to get it finished. So now that I don't have deadlines, thank God, things are a lot more free flowing, and I can concentrate on the individual books that are left. So I do kind of expect that now that things are kind of more organized, I've got more of I don't have a set schedule per se to write. I usually write in the evenings. I find it really difficult to write during the day for some reason. But now that is in place, I do expect to have the series done by spring 2022.
So how have you been able to maintain your connection with your fan base and audience base, given the pandemic and all of the crazy things that have been going on?
Well, here's the crazy thing with that. During most of 2020, I pretty much disappeared from social media because it was basically, I don't think I got any writing done for about 5 months during the pandemic. And the situation was so intense at the time for me that basically I was actually living in a place where it was extremely disruptive as well. I actually live in the middle of nowhere now, so it's actually I'm surrounded by farms and countryside and things like that. So now it's a lot more easier for me to get my head down and just concentrate on getting things done. Whereas before, like literally all of 2020, I don't think I was on social media at all. I think I did briefly reopen Facebook between June 2020 and July 2020. But to be honest with you, like I didn't really spend too much time on social media last year because it was just, I think last year was a complete washout for me. I've got to be honest. So connecting with my fan base during the pandemic was pretty much non-existent.
I totally understand. So given, you've got this whole series and, you've got you're finishing out the series.
Yeah.
What is something that you hope, readers will take away from it?
I hope they can take away from it that, the villain is not always what we believe them to be. And sometimes people can be viewed as bad for doing simple things like standing up for themselves, being confident, and people, they have a kind of skewed perception of it all. And I'd like the reader to take away from it that basically, nothing is what it seems. If you don't know a situation, then don't judge. Because literally in life, we are experiencing things every single day and nothing is clear cut. Some people during the pandemic had been working for years and years, and then suddenly they lost their jobs. So, nothing is clear cut, nothing is set in stone. What we believe to be true may not necessarily be true. And it's all about, I think it's looking at one's perception and how we perceive things, how we perceive people, and it's about looking inwards, really. Because we all have a dark side inside ourselves. All of us.
It's something to acknowledge.
Yeah.
And so it's something that, like I said, to acknowledge and recognize that within us there is something dark. And so our perception of others based on, anything we see or perceive as, dark or ill or evil or whatever, can be kind of skewed when we ourselves, have our own dark spaces.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So what are some ways, how can our viewers purchase the series? How can they connect with you on social media?
So there is, at the moment, the only place you can purchase them is on Amazon and via the ebook, but I am going to be changing that. I am looking at going wide. So it will be available on not just Amazon, but places like Barnes and Noble, iBooks. There's other retailers, I can't even think of the names, but basically I'll be going with Ingram Spark because they distribute to 40,000 retailers, and I just kind of like the sound of that. So that is something that I'm leaning towards doing. I've got to be honest, I don't really like the Kindle Unlimited program, so I'm going to be taking my books out of that. And I'm leaning towards more going wide. In terms of social media, there is the Facebook page, there is Twitter, there is TikTok. I do a lot on TikTok, probably more than anywhere else, because I'm just messing about, doing different videos and stuff. Instagram, Tumblr, LinkedIn. I don't even understand what it does, but I'm on there. There's my blog. There's the Amazon page. If I've missed something, then honestly, I don't know.
And you can find her on Goodreads.
Yes, Goodreads. I actually missed that one.
Definitely find her on Goodreads. So for all of your social media, you can definitely, for our readers, our live viewers and replay viewers, check Isra out on all of her social media outlets, which are below or on our screen. That from TikTok to all of the good stuff. That
also in my Instagram and in my TikTok, there is a link tree in the bio that literally contains all of the links all on one page. So that might be helpful to readers as well.
Awesome. So we would like to thank our guest, Isra Sravenheart, for spending so much time with us this afternoon, where we are this afternoon and morning or early morning or late evening, depending on where you are in the world. Isra, we just wish you continued success.
Thank you.
With Her Dark Soul and the whole series, and then all of the other projects that you have to come, because I'm sure there's more. You've got more stories on the inside than you know.
Yeah.
So to our audience, we want you to make sure you're staying tuned into the PharSide Co-Ed Book Club Facebook page for more author interviews and posts as we celebrate finding joy in the genre in July. So until next time, many roots, many voices are a part of the infinite story. So plant your seed. Have a great afternoon.